Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of the program. We are live, we are national. Happy to be here with you. It's a blessing to be on this microphone. Here's the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And the last American hostage to be released by the Hamas terrorist group was released today, Eden Alexander. No more Americans in Hamas custody, which is a good thing. So I'm happy to discuss that with you guys. And there's plenty of things going on, as always. Lots of moving parts as we all eagerly anticipate what the next move is going to be, right? Now, we've had several analysts on the program talking about different things, that, Trump is buying time because he's got to get people into place. He's got to get the jets lined up. We need to use the stealth bombers and get all the bombs lined up and this and that, and could all make a lot of sense. And then there's others that think this is truly a game of chess, where he is basically allowing this barrage to come from Israel onto Iran. They're in a blackout. They have no power. They have no internet. And allow them to be worn down that way so that they can say, all right, enough is enough. We'll give up the nukes. Just stop. Which, honestly, I think is the best path forward for them. However, I just think of people who, again, the example I always use, and I won't stop using it because they started it, right? They opened their parliamentary sessions chanting death to America, death to Israel, death to the big Satan, death to the little Satan. When you have someone that's that extreme, that is that adamant, hell-bent on your demise, the minute they have this nuclear bomb, I mean, maybe they'll relish a little bit of the fun of saying, hey, we can wipe you out. But I don't think it'll be too much time before they actually try to wipe out Israel or try to wipe out America. This is their goal. This is what they're committed to. Just like any good Marxist. Any good Marxist needs a bad guy. We are their bad guy. They don't have the religious liberty. They don't have whatever it is, heaven on earth, right? Whatever it is that they're preaching, they don't have that because of America. Just like Fidel Castro didn't have what he wanted because of America. Cuba was suffering. People were hungry because of America. They do the same thing. In Puerto Rico, they sing the same song. We don't have this because of the imperialist Yankees. Not because of their own corruption within the government, the statewide government in Puerto Rico for the Commonwealth. No, but because of America. There's always a bad guy, and America's it. So I'm wondering, how far this goes. Now, my gut tells me we will likely launch this attack that at this point I think is widely expected and destroy their nuclear capability beyond any type of recognition, setting them back, I'd say, a century in their pursuit of a nuclear weapon. And then that's that, right? I mean, I think a lot of people are asking, what happens after that? What if someone gets involved? I am a layman. I'm not a professional soldier, so I can't get into those things. But I can tell you what I think. And what I think is, somebody comes up to you and does something to harm you, harm your family. You may, if you're a rational person, sit there and think about it, right? And say, if I react this way, this will happen. If I react that way, that'll happen. That's probably the best thing to do, is to be measured. But I think in real life, many of us, When you get cut off on the road, what do? You don't. I guess some of you just go, oh, what a jerk, and move on. Others, have different responses to that. Others want to get out and fight, or race up to the guy and give him back the bird that he just flipped at you. Everybody's different based on their maturity level, based on how I guess emotionally healthy they are, and how much of someone else's nonsense they can take. But I think there's still a number of people out there that are very decisive in their action and say, look, you know what? Come what may, I'm about to attempt to set this guy straight, whatever that takes. Whether that's, getting in his face, whether it's punching him in the face, whether it's whatever. And again, I'm not calling for that. I'm just saying you have different types of people out there that respond to different situations in different ways. And of course, you know this, right? That's like a Kamala Harris quote. And in this case, I don't know which version of Trump we get. He seems incredibly measured. He seems incredibly slow to act, right? And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean in a biblical kind of way, right? Slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to forgive. That's what the Bible calls us to do, quick to love. So I think Trump's on track there. The question is, what do we do, and when does it happen? I would suspect if something is going to happen, it's going to happen very, very quickly. Anyway, it's Juneteenth, and Juneteenth, big day in American history, of course. The day that the Emancipation Proclamation was made official, right? And everybody, the slaves were made free. This is Juneteenth. This is the day, and widely celebrated across the country. It's also the day that the first Republican National Convention ended in Philadelphia with the nomination of John Charles Fremont of California, who ran for president. Let me see what else we got. Union troops arrived in Galveston, Texas in 1865 with news that the Civil War was over. That's Juneteenth, of course. And all the remaining enslaved people in Texas were free. So kudos to everybody in Texas celebrating Juneteenth now that I think everybody celebrates it, right? So many companies now take that holiday off. What else do we have here? 1910. First Father's Day ever was celebrated in Spokane, Washington in 1910. And it happened today, Juneteenth. And my buddy Curtis Sliwa was shot in a taxi cab on Juneteenth, something like 35 years ago or 30 years ago. And what a riveting story that is. On my podcast, This is America with Rich Valdez, I did a in-depth, probably hour-long sit-down with him, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. And it was just incredible. Incredible to hear that story from beginning to end with me interrupting to get all the details. And it's really quite the tale to see the lengths that people will go to shut up a loudmouth New York radio host. And I'm glad they couldn't keep a good man down. Anyway, there's plenty of stuff to get into tonight. Tonight, you can expect a little military analysis, which we're going to get into momentarily, on what is the next step with Iran and the United States and their involvement. What is the future of the Ukraine-Russia war? And a couple other things I want to get to. We're expected to speak with Major General Bob Dees, former Army general. He's scheduled to join us in a little bit. Then a little bit later, we're going to talk about the latest with these congressional hearings looking into the auto pen. Was Biden actually signing the documents he said he was signing? Was it just ceremonial form letters that they were using auto pen for, or were they actually using it to sign pardons and very sensitive information? We don't know. We're going to find out the latest on that. And then, of course, yesterday you heard about Tennessee being victorious in the Supreme Court because of their protection of straight children and the protection of having those children not have to mutilate their bodies. And I think that's a good thing. So we're going to talk about that. Again, I want to have an additional conversation on that and how we got to that place with radical feminism kind of running all over the place. So plenty to discuss tonight. If you want to bring something to the table, here's the number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue our discussion this evening on what's going on with Israel and Iran. And, of course, Iran striking a hospital today. Think of the softest target in the world you could think of, a hospital where there's women, children, old people. This is what Iran chose to hit, injuring 70 people and others that are being updated in this report. But a reporter caught up with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from Israel and asked him his thoughts on that. Listen to this.
When you see this hospital, what can you tell people who see this kind of...
I think it says everything about Israel and about Iran. Israel is fighting to remove the nuclear and missile threat aimed at our annihilation. We're targeting military sites. We're targeting nuclear sites. We're targeting missile sites. They're targeting a hospital. In this hospital, there are patients who are immobile. They can't even move. Right next to it is a children's ward, a baby's ward, infants. They target it. They can give this nonsense that they're targeting military sites. What military sites? I know all the military sites in Israel. There isn't a military site here for miles and miles around. They're targeting civilians because they're a criminal regime. They're the arch terrorists of the world. They want to have nuclear terrorism, which will put the entire world under nuclear blackmail, and they would use these weapons. That's what the Ayatollah Khamenei says that he would do. He would use these weapons to wipe Israel off the map. Well, he's not going to. We're not going to let him. And we're in the process of achieving a tremendous victory. And our victory is aimed at those two goals. People ask me, are we targeting the downfall of the regime? That may be a result, but it's up to the Iranian people to rise for their freedom. Freedom is never cheap. It's never free. Freedom requires these subjugated people to rise up, and it's up to them. But we may create conditions that will help them do it. Our goal is twofold. Nuclear, ballistic missile, we're going to remove that. We are in the process of removing this threat.
Completely removing the threat. Now, I want to get some reaction to what Prime Minister Netanyahu just said from our guest, the esteemed Major General Bob Dees, retired from the United States Army. He served for 31 years in the U.S. Army in various command and staff positions, including commander of the U.S.-Israeli Combined Task Force for Missile Defense. And he now runs the National Center for Healthy Veterans in rural Virginia. Major General Dees, welcome back, sir.
Rich, great to be with you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And things seem to be, moving quickly, yet appearing somewhat stable. Trump putting this timeline of 2 weeks, which if I know Trump means I could expect to report during my show tonight a strike, because that's kind of how he likes to fake people out. But what are your thoughts on what the Prime Minister said? I mean, the fact that they hit a hospital, I think, is a low blow, and they have to be stopped sooner rather than later, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I can't agree more with the President Netanyahu, the Prime Minister. I've been to Beersheba, where the hospital is. He's exactly right. There's not a lot of urban clutter around it. It couldn't have been a mistake on the Iranians' part. So I agree that generally they do target civilian, and they are terrorists in every means of the word. Israelis have been very good about attacking military targets only. So yeah, I agree with him, and that's just illustrative of the dark versus light contrast I think we have here in this conflict.
Now, I see a lot of information, but of course we're in the information age, right? So if I click on one video that shows something that's kind of pro-Persian, right, the people of Iran, saying they're celebrating trying to get rid of it, I see 100 videos after that. What's the other side of that coin from your experience serving in that region? Are the people really with the mullahs, with the Ayatollah, or is it really a bunch of radicals with a lot of good people under their thumb in Iran?
Yeah, I would choose the latter, Rich. People ask about regime change. I don't think regime change is an objective of the Israelis, but I have to think if they have such destruction of their nuclear capabilities and the rest of their infrastructure, electric, et cetera, that the people, the subjugated masses, as Netanyahu referred to them, they have tried to rise in the past, and the United States didn't support them. So I think this is a prime opportunity for them to rise. People ask, is it Afghanistan, Iraq, an extended conflict? Or I would offer another alternative. Hopefully it's like Poland, where, the wall went down. There's loss of order and the autocratic government, and all of a sudden a Lech Valencia, a ship worker, rises from the middle of the masses, leads them, and that now they have democratic government. So I would hope that in Iran, President Trump has been very clear to say that he's not against the Iranian people. We love them, and he wants Iran. He wants to make Persia great again.
General Dees, in your assessment, if I believe, and again, I'm not the general you are, but if I were, I would say if we're bombing their nuclear sites already, and you've got people that are looking to, be liberated from this regime. Not that I'm advocating for regime change, but it seems like it's kind of a necessary step. Not that we change them, but somebody changes them because they have to be eliminated somehow. Or is that a step too far?
Well, I think that's going to be a side effect of it. It's not a stated objective.
Right.
They're not claiming a regime change, but it's going to be a significant emotional event in the world of Iran. You heard President Netanyahu use the word destruction. In military terms, there's defeating an enemy, which means you reduce their power to resist, but destruction is literally reducing their ability and in any way to resist. And he talks about destruction, and that's the hard part. That's sort of, we always say, like, the last 10% is the hardest part of any, operation. So going from defeat, which I think even exists already with the air superiority that the Israelis have and the destruction that has been incurred thus far, going to the destruction of the full capability is the question of the day, because will it require the United States to do that? And I think the president has wisely bit off a 2-week window. You're right, it could be tonight, or it could be on July the 3rd or 4th, depends on how you count. If it's on July the 4th, that would be pretty symbolic. Yes, the U.S. has to become involved in this.
Major General Bob Dees, my thinking here is that this should be, and I think everybody, and Trump has said this as well, the president, that we don't want anything that's long and protracted. You brought up, is this Afghanistan? And I remember in Afghanistan, the idea there was to be in and out as well, but it ended up becoming a long-term thing. What's the potential for that here? And I'm guessing it should be stated from the onset, right? If the president says the United States is going to assist the Israelis in doing this because we have the bombs, we have the planes, we have the people that know how to fly these planes, we're going to get this done, and that's it. Would that be the right strategy to say, this is what we're doing? Well, now the music's interrupted me. So, folks, hold my own thought. We're going to come right back with Major General Bob Dees and find out, do we get in and out of this? And what is next on the list with this war with Iran? Folks, we're coming right back. Major General Bob Dees, U.S. Army retired commander of the task force between the United States and Israel. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
God bless you, because literally I think you represent, the new voice of America. What you say is what people are listening to.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez keeping you company all night long. And our guest is Major General Bob Dees. Bob Dees served the United States Army for 31 years, including as the commander of the U.S.-Israeli Joint Task Force for Missile Defense. He now runs the National Center for Healthy Veterans in Virginia. And General Dees, we left off with my question, long-winded question, which was regarding to make it shorter, How do we get in and out quickly?
Yeah, I think we just heard the press secretary talk about peace through strength, and sometimes you have to exercise that strength. And in this case, I think it needs to be exercised quickly, decisively, and that's how we avoid a long, protracted conflict. This one does not have to be hard in a philosophical sense. We know what needs to happen. We need to eliminate their capability of a nuclear weapon. And either Israel does it or the U.S. helps him do it, and the president counts the cost on all that and all the ramifications. But it's not like that's why he's established a 2-week window. He's trying to set very established timelines, objectives, and let's get on with business. Let's don't dilly-dally around with this. That only results in more casualties and more confusion and less decisiveness of outcome.
Now, General, the White House press secretary said that the Iranians are weeks away from having an executable weapon, right? She clarified that today. With that being said, how emergent is this? Do we have 2 weeks, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I simply don't know. I don't have all the inside baseball on intel. My guess would be that yes, within 2 weeks, they can have something that's dangerous. What I mean by that is they may not have the ability to weaponize an atomic weapon on the head of a ballistic missile and aim at the United States or whatever, but dirty bombs, suitcase bombs, less technical atomic weapons, would certainly be capable. And Israel is such a small place, it wouldn't take much to make their day with even something like that. So it is an existential crisis, and it is time sensitive.
Now, if they were to use tactical nukes like that, I know the radius on those is smaller, but how much smaller, and what's the impact?
Well, I couldn't tell you the exact dimensions of it. It just depends on what the device is.
Right.
But the point is, nuclear is nuclear. It has a half-life of not just days, but of years and decades. And so if it's used somewhere, it'll cause radiation sickness. It'll kill people. It'll start fires. And it'll be a bad day, worse than any other, combination of ballistic missiles or anything else that has happened. So it is definitely something to be avoided. It's definitely something to be deterred and frankly, destroyed.
Now, Major General Bob Dees, President Trump was outside the White House this morning, and he was commenting on the ongoing conflict with Ukraine and Russia. Can we hear
Rich,
it?
let me, while you're waiting on that, let me just provide there's in military terms, we look for intent and we look for capability. And so we're debating the Iranian capability for this nuclear weapon. Is it days, weeks, what is it? But we know their intent. And their intent is death to America, death to Israel. And so we simply can't mess around with somebody that has expressed that serious intent to harm us and others, whether they have the capability that's a day away or weeks away.
And I think we've got that cut queued up. Thank you, General, for that additional analysis with President Trump outside the White House. All right, listen to this.
Russia, Ukraine is so stupid. Would have never happened if I was president. You guys agree with that, right? Would have never happened if I was president. Putin would have never done it. And I spoke to him yesterday, and I said, he actually offered to help mediate. I said, do me a favor. Mediate your own. Let's mediate Russia first, okay? I said, Vladimir, let's mediate Russia first. You can worry about this later. But I think that's going to work out, too. But so many people have been killed. The big thing with that one is far more people are dead than have been reported in the Ukraine, Russia. Many, many more people.
General, this is, again, I look at this and I think, is this President Putin trying to be a nice guy? Is this President Putin trying to get in the middle of something? Is this President Putin looking out for materials that he needs that come from Iran? What's your estimation of what's going on here?
My guess is that President Putin is trying to get back in the news cycle. When the Middle East takes the focus away, from what he's doing and some of the political leverage, then that's a problem for him. I think this also illustrates our president just detests war, detests death as a result of war.
Yeah.
We see that in so many ways. He doesn't just say those words. He viscerally feels it more than any president I've known, that really viscerally does not want soldiers and the sons and daughters of America or any other country to die in combat.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty evident typically in his responses. Oftentimes people give these responses to questions like the ones I'm asking about strategy, about outcomes, and he usually responds with, we have to stop the killing. People are dying, kind of reminding us, hello, we're talking about humans here, which I think sometimes many of us forget. General Bob Dees, outstanding. I want to talk quickly about your work. You do amazing work with the Healthy Veterans Center. Tell us about the National Center for Healthy Veterans.
You bet, Rich. Thanks for asking. Healthyveterans.org. People can find out more. We are a 9-month residential program for at-risk veterans. We're really a national prototype. We've starting to have some spin-offs in other places. The first one is in Somerset, Kentucky, Bluegrass Veterans Ranch. And we have people live in community, tiny homes to defeat isolation, one of the primary causes of veteran suicide. Dignified work, provide purpose, self-esteem. We have trauma recovery, life skills programs, and career preparation, all on a beautiful piece of property with horses and cattle and chickens and donkeys and a lot of, quote, dignified work. So all of that makes sense. We have counselors, coaches, and we're just seeing great results. We're seeing people that were homeless, people that were incarcerated, that are coming back and able to give back to America and be responsible citizens. So we just ask for people around the nation, around New York, to find at-risk veterans that need what we have. And obviously, many hands make light work, and we always appreciate any shekels that people send our way.
Okay, if people want to put their hand deep into their pocket and give you the best donation possible to help the veterans you're serving, how do they help you?
They just go to healthyveterans.org, and there's buttons at the top that can help them refer a veteran, help them give to us, help them find out more information.
Outstanding. Major General Bob Dees, retired from the United States Army. I want to thank you for joining us. Look forward to speaking with you soon as this stuff continues to develop.
Thank you, Rich. Appreciate it.
God bless you, sir. Bye now. All right, amigos, and your thoughts, reactions, calls, everything else on what's going on. Are we going to be going to help Israel drop these bombs? If one of the analyses I saw today on Newsmax is accurate, then we're going to need stealth bombers that can carry these 30,000-pound bunker busters, and we're going to need about 10 of them. That means 10 planes, 10 bombs, because each plane can only hold about 40,000 pounds of bomb. And with each bomb weighing 30,000 pounds, means you need 10 planes or one plane making 10 trips. And that trip is 30 hours. The good news is these planes are virtually undetectable, so they don't really get shot down very often. That's what I know about it so far. But I'm curious to know your thoughts. Does the United States get involved? And if so, when? What are your thoughts, predictions? I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you in Oregon, in California, in New York, and everywhere in between, Florida, Washington, Chicago. Let's go, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, let's go to the phones. Of course, it's a time-honored tradition on this program to bring it to we the people, the American people, right? Way back in the day when it was Larry King, Open Phone America, a tradition continued by the late, great Jim Bohannon. 3 decades of taking your calls, and you and I get to continue that tradition this evening. I want to go to Ridgefield, New Jersey, listening on WOND 1400. That's out of Atlantic City. Holla. Let's go to Denise. Go right ahead.
Well, first of all, I was in the military for 23 years.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I wasn't in intelligence, but I was in the medical corps. But it doesn't take a lot of, mental, dexterity to ask why are we telling the general public, in 2 weeks we're going to make a decision, and then reporters saying, well, are we going to do this and are we going to do that?
Right.
Why would we forecast a punch?
Yeah, I agree. I think President Trump yesterday, when he was asked that, they said, will we be striking Iran? And he said, come on, you can't really be asking that. I can't tell you that. He said, I don't even know if I'm doing that. And it was a good answer. He was prepared for it. But the reality is, you're right. The media, and again, this is one of my things that keeps me in business over here. Me beating up the media, me beating up the communist-leaning Democrats. The media is so fixated at times on gotcha, on trying to paint things a certain way, trying to paint Trump into a corner, trying to make it look, they're doing the enemy's job. Oftentimes, I think the American media, those that aren't directly complicit, are complicit by way of being useful idiots because all they do is try and telegraph this stuff. But Denise, you may have heard this clip from yesterday where President Trump took that very question, and I just want to play a clip of it just so that the audience knows what you're talking about. Listen to this.
Have you been answered questions about whether you are moving closer or you believe the U.S. is moving closer to striking Iranian nuclear facilities? Where's your mindset on that?
I can't say that, right? You don't seriously think I'm going to answer that question? Will you strike the Iranian nuclear component? And what time exactly, sir? Sir, would you strike it? Would you please inform us so we can be there and watch? You don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. Nobody knows what I'm going to do. I can tell you.
Nobody knows what he's going to do until he makes his decision. So, yeah, Denise, I think you're 100% right. And sadly, we have a media that doesn't wake up in the morning, and I'm making generalized statements, right? Whenever I make statements like that, people come and beat me up, and they say, but Rich, you're in the media. I understand that. But by and large, the people that have way bigger platforms than me, these guys wake up in the morning, and do you think they thank God for America? Do you think they care about this country? I don't know that they do all the time because of the questions they ask. Denise.
Well, I agree, but I'm not blaming Trump per se, because he gets bombarded by all these idiots who ask questions, and I love it when he doesn't like a particular reporter, he goes after them. Oh yeah, I'm not taking calls from. I'm not taking questions from you. You're fake media.
Yeah, you're
I love
it. Well, I think sometimes you just got to call them out, Denise, because otherwise, we get lost in the sauce. Denise in Ridgefield, thank you again for your service. I appreciate it. You are a patriot, and we continue. Where do we continue? We continue to Boise, Idaho. Boise, Idaho. We got our buddy Paul streaming from Boise, Idaho tonight. RichValdez.com. Go right ahead.
Hi, Rich.
Hey, brother.
Thanks for taking my call. I'm kind of worn out. I had the treatment today. I see 2 doctors, a bunch of stuff.
Oh,
anyway,
man.
I'm okay.
Well, you hang in
I'm
there,
better.
brother. You're a champ.
Yep. Hey, I thought the first time I heard that Trump's going to take a 14-day hiatus, I thought, man, this guy is even smarter than I ever imagined.
Oh, you mean the
Cooling
2 weeks
off
to
period,
make his decision?
Rethink. Yeah. Rethink everything. Cooler decisions, cooler heads prevail. You think straight. When you run into something, you may not be able to back out if you run into something.
And you know what else, Paul? I think part of this has to do with, again, who Trump is, right? I think, we make the mistake, or many make the mistake, of looking at Trump like he's just another president. But I think they forget he's never had a government job but for being president for 4 years ago. He doesn't know how this government world works. He knows how it works, but he doesn't have that experience that many of previous presidents brought to the table, and that's exactly why he does so well. That to me is his secret power. It's like a superpower. The secret weapon here is the fact that he has been a businessman for as long as he has, and he's been a builder for as long as he has, and he's been working the media for as long as he has, and he realizes we've got to make this thing look the right way, and we've got to keep extending that olive branch to the Iranians, saying, look, we do not want a war. We don't want to get into this, but we also can't allow it to continue. So please come to the table. In Spanish, my mother would say, a la buena o a la mala, either, by hook or by crook, but you got to get here one way or another. And I think that's what's happening right now. And my hope is, right, thinking as I think Trump does oftentimes in leaving legacy and not legacy for himself and his presidency, but legacy for America. I think he looks at this and thinks, what's the best outcome here? The best outcome here is a Reagan-esque outcome, right, where you have Gorbachev coming with Reagan together. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall, and the wall gets torn down, and Gorbachev lives on, and Reagan lives on, and nobody's dropping bombs. Just imagine a world where Trump says, Mr. Ayatollah, destroy these nukes. And they say, we changed our mind. Now, I don't think they do it because I think the Russians are hardcore commies, but they disbanded the Soviet Union and they changed their tune. I don't know that we're going to see that coming from the theocrats in Tehran, but it is a possibility. So, Paul, we'll have to, keep our eyes peeled to see what happens next. I appreciate the call, brother, and I hope you feel better soon. Let us continue right after this.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. We continue with our phone calls this evening. What's on your mind, America? 833-4-VALDEZ. Let us go to Will, Union, New Jersey, streaming the show, richvaldez.com. Go right ahead, sir.
Good evening, Rich. Love your show. Big time supporter. Long time friend.
My man. How are you, brother?
I'm well, man. I'm listening to the show as I've been, doing for a while. And I wanted to, give my input on should we get involved or not, what was going on overseas. Sure. I feel that we should concentrate on the issues that we have at hand in our own country first before we go out there and create more enemies that we already have. And if we can afford to go overseas and, expend all this money that we have to put on all these bonds that we might want to go and bring over. I know we, some people might be in need, and, I've sympathized with, every country out there that we have aid before.
Yeah. Well, listen, I get where you're going with this, and I'm going to have a break coming up, but check this out. I think ultimately we always will have a strong military and a military budget, irrespective of using it or not. Something the general said earlier is it's good to have peace through strength, and sometimes you have to exercise that strength. So, yeah, I'm with you. America first all day, every day. But we don't have an America if we have a nuclear Iran. Thanks for the call, my brother. Amigos, we're coming right back. More to come straight ahead. Hasta la próxima. Take care. Good night. And God bless you, America. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to the Thursday night edition of the program. We're live and national. This is another hour. Happy to be with you. It's really a blessing. Here's the number, 833-4825-337, 833-4-Valdez. And I want to get into some of the commentary that's out there regarding the biggest story of the day, which has been the biggest story of the week. Israel bombing Iran to end their nuclear capability. Of course, Iran striking back today, hitting a hospital, injuring a bunch of civilians. And this is the type of warfare that they engage in. Now, I know the other side, the bad guys, they like to say, no, it's Netanyahu. He's a war criminal. And he likes to say that we're hiding behind soft targets because we use them as human shields. But that's not true. We're just righteous people, right? All I can say is, look, for people who don't follow this and don't care for it, and listen, I know a lot of people don't follow and don't care. But I'll tell you this. Israel doesn't exist to destroy anyone. Hamas does exist to destroy Israel. That's a given. So I know there's a lot of critique out there about the Israeli government, a lot of critique about Benjamin Netanyahu. Super. Keep all your critiques going. No problem for me. My issue is that Israelis don't exist to end the lives of anyone. And when you have groups that pop up and their purpose is precisely to end yours, that's a problem. And when that extends to the United States, where I live with my family, because of this country's commitment to having an ally, a very capable ally in the Middle East, well, now, Houston, we've got a problem, right? Because this isn't the world we need to live in. We've seen enough conflict come out of the Middle East when we know where we don't have good relationships with them, how ugly things can get. So right now, we're in a position where Trump, President Trump, El Trompito, Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, when he goes to certain places in the Middle East, he was received like a king, given a real king's welcome. I'm not saying Trump is a king. I'm not saying I worship Trump as a king. None of that. I know a lot of people like to put words in my mouth. I'm saying that he was respected because he's taking this hardline approach against Iran. The Saudis love him. Those in Qatar love him. Now, listen, I know there's plenty of Israelis and Jews that don't like Qatar. I'm not singing the praises of Qatar. I am specifically stating that they received our president, the president of the United States, and gave him a real hero's welcome. And they did that for whatever reason, but they did it. And it wasn't something that happened during the Biden administration. And I think, like Trump says, I think getting along is a good thing. If we could have peace with everybody, that's a good thing. Can we always have it? No. Do you have to be vigilant? Yes. Do you got to be ready and ready to fight? You bet. Now, President Obama, he gave a warning that the United States is losing democracy, that we are dangerously close to losing democracy. And the question I will posit to you is, President Obama is a smooth dude. He is a sharp fellow. And many would say he's a smart fellow. But I would say this comment is not very smart. I don't think we're losing our democracy because there's people killing each other in the Middle East. I don't think we're losing our democracy because there's people killing each other over in Europe. I can tell you where people aren't killing each other, right here in North America. Now, is there some craziness going on in these streets? Yeah. Are murders occurring in the streets? Sure. Is there war going on? No. Are there riots that are incredibly violent, bordering insurrection? You bet. And are they being controlled? Yeah, they are. So this isn't a perfect world. I'm not painting a utopian picture. But for the President of the United States, with all of the sway that he has, with all of the influence that a statement from him brings, I think this was a poorly thought thing to say. Listen to this.
Our biggest challenge right now is we need democracy and social cohesion and trust more than ever. And it's probably as weak as it's been since I've been alive. And that's a bad combination.
Now, with all due respect to former President Obama, I would ask, why is our democracy weak in your opinion? I would say I just witnessed with my own eyes, as many of you did, the election of a president with more votes cast in this last election than ever before, right? There was a ton of votes. And not only that, if democracy is dying and it's the weakest it's ever been, why did so many groups, including black men, so many young black men decided to vote for Donald Trump? It doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump. I don't care who they voted for. My point is that you saw people engaged in the process. My entire lifetime, President Obama, and you can agree with this. I know you can because I've heard you say it. People of color have been disenfranchised from politics, right? That's something we've heard and been told. But if we look at the actual results of the election, we see that the disenfranchised put Trump over the top. It wasn't the white people that got him in the White House. It was the Hispanic vote and this growth that he got in the black vote. That's what put him over the top. That's the part he didn't expect to get that pushed him to the finish line. So I would say, contrary to President Obama, that our democracy is stronger now than it's ever been in your lifetime. You tell me a time where Hispanics and blacks are going to come together and vote the way they did in overwhelming numbers, where you have a candidate that wins the House, the Senate, the White House, and 7 of 7 swing states. 100% of the swing states, this candidate won. That, to me, doesn't spell a recipe for disaster for democracy. That tells me our democracy is alive and well when you get unscrupulous people out of the way. Now, I also know this. Harry Enton from CNN, he's out there asking people what they think about the Iran and Israeli war that's going on right now over the nuclear facilities. And if democracy isn't alive, then these people aren't telling the truth. Listen to this.
And overall, I feel like there's more support for Donald Trump's positions than is comically acknowledged. Oppose Iran getting a nuclear weapon. I mean, look at this. 79% of adults agree on that. They agree with Donald Trump. Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon. 83% of Republicans, 79% of independents, 79% of Democrats. When you get 79% of Democrats and 83% of Republicans agreeing on anything, you know that that position is the very clear majority in this country. And so the American public is with Donald Trump. They definitely oppose Iran getting nuclear weapons.
So this is a nuance here, but, Trump and Netanyahu both arguing that Iran is close to being capable of making a nuclear weapon. If that is the case, what is the feeling of Americans as to whether the United States should get involved in this conflict?
Right. If you buy Donald Trump's theory of the case, and I think that's important to note, this is polling from April. If Iran's trying to make a nuclear weapon, look at this. Overall, you get the slight plurality. I mean, it's within the margin of error, but the slight plurality of Americans actually favor U.S. airstrikes compared to 47% opposing it. Now, here's the other nugget I'll note, right? There's been a lot of talk online and on social media and in podcasts of a divide within the Republican ranks. But here on this question, if Iran's trying to make a nuclear weapon, look at that. 69% of Republicans, the clear vast majority of Republicans, favor U.S. airstrikes on Iran, on their nuclear facilities. But there is this substantial minority, 27%, who oppose such an idea. So it's not surprising you're hearing those other voices besides Donald Trump out there. There are plenty of them in the Republican ranks who oppose the U.S. striking Iran if they're trying to make a nuclear weapon. But the clear majority of Republicans are with Donald Trump if, in fact, Iran is trying to make nuclear weapons. They do, in fact, potentially favor U.S. airstrikes.
So there you have the numbers on that, right? Favoring his decisions, favoring everything else, and giving him favorable numbers. Take a look at these real quick. We've got this from the Insider Advantage poll conducted on June 15th and 16th, so relatively just a couple of days ago. 1,000 likely voters putting Trump at 54% approval, giving him a plus 10 gain in points here because previously that was the case. This is, 8 points up from April when 46 approved and 40% disapproved. So disapproval not moving from April till now, but approval growing quite a bit. So this is a good development for Trump. So again, back to President Obama. Sir, I would say to you with all due respect, I think you just got this one wrong. And if you're in the Beltway and you can hear what I'm saying, please call the show. We'd love to have a chat with President Obama. I also want to find out what is going on with these hearings. There's hearings on Capitol Hill looking into what's up with this auto pen stuff, right? There was some lawsuits about that last month. Now Congress is conducting these hearings on who knew what and when did they know it, who was signing what with this auto pen. Were they just signing happy birthday letters for Biden, or was it actual pardons and other, highly sensitive information that the president should know he's signing? I don't know the answer to that, but hopefully Mike Howell can let us know when he joins us straight ahead. Keep it locked right here.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Well, you're a true patriot and a Latino voice. We need more of you in America. And keep up your good work, Rich.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jackie. Hope you guys have a great weekend. We'll start with the Fox News alert. Republicans making a big-time push in their investigations into the alleged cover-up of former President Biden's mental decline while he was in office. House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer now firing off his very first subpoena of the probe. The recipient, Biden's former White House doctor, Kevin O'Connor.
So that was a clip of a report from Fox News earlier today about these investigations, the hearings that are going on Capitol Hill into the auto pen. What is going on? Who knew what? When did they know it? I want to bring in our guest because he brought lawsuits on behalf of this and many other important things. He's the president of the Oversight Project. Mike Howell, welcome, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet, brother. I know you got your finger on the pulse of this stuff. So what's going on? What can we expect? I know I'm typically, just to paint this picture a little bit, I'm typically very critical of congressional questioning, only because I feel like it never goes anywhere, especially if it's something that could potentially be criminal. In my lifetime, I don't remember anybody ever really getting in trouble for doing something bad, except for Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro. And even they weren't in jail that long. So my question here is, what are we going to get out of these hearings, and what's your expectation?
So you should expect nothing, but you deserve everything. And I think you're absolutely correct that Congress has fallen down. But I'll tell you what's different. That shouldn't change the expectation. It's that the Oversight Project, our group, is the one who broke this story. An external outside group took it 90 yards down the football field and put it in the red zone. The evidence is all there. What is missing right now is the use of legal compulsory process, subpoenas, getting text messages, getting bank records, getting White House records. Mm-hmm. Those are the clear next steps. And usually with congressional oversight, they're not people who have the experience and know how it works, like the Oversight Project, who are calling out exactly what Congress and the administration need to do. And we're, basically going to call them out if they don't push pedal to the metal. But there's some very obvious first steps they should take. They got to subpoena Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. Those guys wrote the book on their own cover-up, and they say they know the 200 sources who can tell you who the president was and the plan to prop up Biden if he were to win again. Second, they need to do what the January 6th committee did. They need to go after the Biden White House staffers, pull them in, get them in front of depositions under subpoena, get their text messages, get their bank records, everything, and start picking apart their narrative and pitting people against each other. And then finally, they need to get the White House records of the control of the auto pen, who was authorized to use it and which instances were properly logged. And then you start building out an investigation from there. It's not rocket science. This is a pretty easy roadmap that we've laid out. And if Congress doesn't do it, we're going to call them out.
Yeah. I want to say a couple of things here because I think you're right on with this. And really the main part is, you said, conducting discovery like they did with January 6th, right? One of my critiques of the January 6th committee was that they were overstepping their bounds in congressional oversight, and that they were, in effect, being the investigatory arm doing like law enforcement criminal investigations and that type of discovery on behalf of the Democrats. in order to try and prosecute Trump. And that's kind of what they did. They said, we turned over all our records over here. And then they actually did go and bring in Jack Smith and bring a case. They had a clear plan on what they wanted to do. And it sounds like you're writing out a clear plan, but we don't have the right, momentum coming out of Congress to make it happen.
That's absolutely right. And that's why I founded the Oversight Project, is because there's not another group who can do stuff like this and lobby and push. And, if we have to, run political ads on this to call out people who aren't doing what they should be doing. The key difference between this and January 6th, in my mind, is January 6th was an investigation of what, the Democrats would tell you was a criminal act, a riot. And so that's something that's traditionally left to law enforcement. That's what law enforcement does, right? There's a different legislative function than there is a criminal investigatory function. Here, it is squarely in the congressional interest in a system of checks and balances, because the very basic principles, correct, it's the very basic principles of adhering to the Constitution. Article 2, do we have a president and a commander-in-chief? And we did not for 4 years. We had a presidency by committee, an auto pen presidency, and Congress has a role. And if you don't believe me, believe the Constitution. The 25th Amendment says so. What the Biden administration was supposed to do is, when they became aware of his incapacitation, or you pick your time at when you think he was fully off of it, but we can all agree that he was incapacitated by the end. The 25th Amendment says the vice president and a majority of the cabinet need to vote and then transmit to Congress a notification of his incapacitation. And if you read further into that Section 4 of the 25th Amendment, it calls out Congress and says Congress can set up another body to handle these things. And so it's squarely in the congressional interest and in the Constitution, whereas January 6th was, as you pointed out, an augmentation of federal investigative criminal enforcement.
Yeah. Now, again, Mike Howell, stick with me, because I want to continue to pull on this thread a little bit. And amigos that are listening, this is, you're not going to get this, at least this in depth, from Mike Howell in many other places, because this is kind of in the weeds, but we have to get in the weeds a little bit to make sure that everybody understands what's happening. And if we've got to make some phone calls to Congress, then that's what we've got to do to get to the bottom of this auto pen fiasco. So stick with me, Mike Howell. Amigos, we're coming right back with Mike Howell, president of the Oversight Project, and me, Rich Valdez. Don't go anywhere.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? But right. You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I never saw anything in Joe Biden that made me wonder whatsoever. And it's not that I was with Joe Biden every single day, that's for sure. The way that I would describe Joe is, he's a granddaddy, right? And so, the way that my granny was when she was younger versus ultimately kind of where she was at 81 when she ended up passing away, mentally, she was still there, but we all slow down. But I will tell you that I will take a broken, or however they want to describe Joe Biden, over Donald Trump any given day. Because number one, I know Joe Biden's heart. And I can tell you that when you look at the legislation that he was able to push forward with, this wasn't legislation that was about him and his rich friends. It was legislation that was for the good of the American people. And when you look at the people that he surrounded himself with, even if you're saying that there was a mentally deficient Joe Biden, I know that he absolutely had a mental acuity that is supreme when it comes to comparing him to Donald Trump. Even if we want to say, which I refuse to accept, that Joe Biden was mentally deficient, let me tell you something. His mental deficiency is still 1,000 times better than what we currently have.
That is Jasmine Crockett, Congresswoman from Texas, on with Katie Couric. giving her opinion of El Trompito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th and 47th president of these United States, saying that Biden was a better option. If he was so good of an option, Jasmine Crockett, why didn't you fight for Joe Biden when your Democrat friends pushed him off the ballot and just installed Kamala with no primary? Of course, crickets from the audience there. I want to come back to our guest. Our guest is Mike Howell, president of the Oversight Project. And Mike Howell, when you hear Jasmine Crockett say that she's seen nothing going on with Joe Biden's mental acuity and that he was the sharpest tack in the room, your thoughts?
Well, first off, it's nice to hear Jasmine Crockett speak English. The clips I see of her, she's basically doing spoken word, broken English, rap, hip hop, basically at congressional hearings. So it's nice to be able to understand her. What she said is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Everybody in the world knows. And if the Democrats want to go down with this sinking ship of Joe Biden, which they don't need to, frankly, they could all just own up. Joe Biden's a deteriorating asset. He's off the scene. The Democrat Party's in enough trouble, as it is. But if they want to continue the lie that some of them have, minimally atoned for, I invite them to. Please go down with the Biden administration because it's absurd. Everyone in the United States knows it. Everyone around the world knows it. Biden's own Department of Justice said it. We all saw the debate. He was not there. The lights were on, but nobody was home.
Yeah, sadly, it seems that way, that Biden was, and again, it seemed like that from the campaign, not just, from the latter part of his presidency. And my question here, always is, and what people ask me is, people tend to think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but that there is some sort of criminal penalty somewhere for this happening. And my thinking is we'd have to prove that there was some sort of conspiracy going on in the minds of cabinet members, that they were conspiring to not use the 26th Amendment to get rid of Joe Biden, to protect him somehow. And I'm not alleging that there wasn't a cover-up. I just don't know who to hold criminally liable anywhere. And that's why I really like the work you're doing, because you're going after the root of the problem, because this was a political cover-up.
Yes, and we got no shortage of criminals or criminal statutes that I can cite to you. Let's start with everybody's favorite Adam Schiff, the recipient of an auto-penned, funky, no-good pardon for his work on the January 6th committee. I testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee and said this to his colleagues. Of course, Adam Schiff, when he heard I was going to bring this up, ran out of the hearing room, just like the Democrats didn't show up to the hearing this week. But Adam Schiff should be charged, as well as everyone else who received the auto-pen pardons that Biden knew nothing about. And so whether it's Fauci, Milley, the Biden family members, January 6th committee, and all their kind of people, they should be charged criminally for the crimes they admitted that they committed when they accepted the pardons. And so they already got a guilty plea in pretty much. And so the Trump Department of Justice should proceed with criminally charging them. As it relates to the cover-up, there's a lot there. We've listed out the statutes that we think are implicated. Let's walk through a couple of them. First, forgery. You can't forge the president's signature. That's pretty spot on. 2, impersonation of a federal official. 3, for everyone who knew what was going on and said nothing about it, misprision of a felony. They had a duty to report what was happening. They did not. And so the people who were aware and let it go anyways can be charged with misprision of a felony. And the list goes on and on. You can get lies to Congress, USC 1001. You can get all sorts of other criminal penalties. And that's why, the work the Oversight Project did, which I'm tremendously proud of because we broke the story. We've been working on it for a year. Ultimately, it's the people with guns and badges and legal power who need to take this to the accountability stage. We can't do that, at our little nonprofit. But the government has everything they need to do it. And if they don't do it, it's because there's a lack of political will. There's not a lack of legal options or evidence. We've put it all out there.
Now, Mike Howell, you got me interested because I like what you're saying. My question here is, what do you think some of the obstacles? I don't think it's a lack of will to bring these prosecutions from Pam Bondi or from Kash Patel to do the investigations, but more so maybe a perception issue or just, a staffing issue. What do you perceive to be the holdup if you think there's a criminal case?
I think no one's in charge at the end of the day, apart from obviously President Trump. You have too many things going at the same time. You got the Senate committee, you got the House investigation, you got President Trump's executive order. So everyone kind of point their finger at the other one. Everyone's got busy day jobs and things to do. Congress has to go on cable news and raise money and, do lunch with lobbyists and things like that. And so no one ultimately is responsible for doing this. And I guess you could make an argument that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are, since they're AG and FBI director. But there needs to be kind of a real clear objective. And the objective cannot just be, we're going to have congressional hearings, we're going to, Truth Social post about it and tweet about it. It has to be, we want to find out who was the president for the last 4 years, and then hold people accountable. For all this talk of attacks on democracy from the Democrats over the last 4 years, where democracy was ending before our eyes if President Trump were to be anything but in jail for the rest of his life. This is the biggest attack on democracy in our lifetime in the United States history. We operated without a president. And so they need to get serious about it and put pedal to the metal. And I think if they don't, this is the biggest example of a missed accountability. I mean, look at what they did to Trump. Look at what they did to over January 6th. We got power. We got the House, the Senate, the White House. If we can't deliver on such a layup, I don't think people show up in the midterms.
Interesting point. Now, Mike Howell, if asked to serve as a special counsel or something like that, would you take a hiatus from the current role and be the tip of the spear on this?
You flatter me. If the president were to ask, I'd have a bunch of creative options for him. We would serve as requested. I'll put it that way.
All right. Well, this program's heard a lot in D.C. on WMAL, so a lot of people listening to this. Maybe somebody will pick up what we're dropping. Mike Howell, I want to thank you for being here, brother. Thanks for adding a lot of color and a lot of context to the conversation. You definitely opened my eyes to a few things because I didn't see so many possibilities, and mainly because I just think a lot of them are just difficult to prove, and there's a lot of other fish to fry. But this needs to be front and center, I believe, as well as so many other things need to be front and center. You're right. There's a lot going on. Let everybody know how they can support the work that you guys are doing and how they can keep up to speed with you.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. So we're on X at It's Your Gov, G-O-V, and that's because it's your government. The Oversight Project's fighting for you because you know what? These people at the government, they do work for you. So we're suing them, we're investigating them, and we're letting them know who's actually in charge, and that's you. And our website's itsyourgov.org. Please follow us. We're putting all of our stuff directly out there to the people. We're not going through the filter of the mainstream media. It's just direct into the veins of the American public.
Outstanding work, brother. Godspeed to you, and I'll speak with you soon, my man.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, amigos, your thoughts, calls, reactions, and so much more coming up. We continue with our coverage of the latest with the Iran-Israel conflict, as well as everything happening domestically. So keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You are educating the public, and the public is getting good information if they listen to your show.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Regarding the ongoing situation in Iran, I know there has been a lot of speculation amongst all of you in the media regarding the president's decision-making and whether or not the United States will be directly involved. In light of that news, I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, "Based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks." That's a quote directly from the president for all of you today.
All right, amigos, I want to get your thoughts, opinions, and reactions on all of this stuff because plenty going on. And let us go. I want to go to JJ calling us from Montgomery, Maryland on WMAL. JJ, go right ahead. You're on with Rich Valdez. Welcome.
Hello there, Rich. By the way, that last interview you did, that fellow was great. I've got a couple of thoughts. Want to know what you think. Certainly agree with the president that the Iranians cannot have a nuclear weapon or multiple nuclear weapons. But when you watch what the Israelis have done, you see that they've had these plans for years and years and years. So I'm thinking they must have plans to continue without the U.S.'s help. That must have been one of their options. And I just think that they could potentially get to where they're thinking about busting up this mountain, and they could dismantle this whole thing themselves. Now, I don't know if that's possible or what you think, but I think they're pretty smart, pretty resilient. They think way ahead. Yeah, listen, and very capable. And there are a ton of them already in Iran. And it's not that I'm against Trump, jumping in. I mean, look, he's got the whole world set up with aircraft carriers and planes and refuelers. I mean, they're there.
I mean, I think the United States is ready to go. And anytime you have a chance, in a moment like this, to lift up your shirt and show people what type of medal you're holding, I think it's not a bad idea to do a little brandishing every now and again to remind people we're still in this game. This is not Joe Biden's America anymore. I think that's an important thing for us to do. I think we were used and abused by a lot of people around this world during Biden's presidency. People were running amok, and I think Trump being back just gives people that reminder, hey, slow your roll, take it easy. It's not that game anymore. That's part of it. I think the other part of it is I think you're right. The Israelis are capable, and I don't know that there is an immediate need, and I don't think President Trump knows that just yet either. What we do know is that if this is based on actionable real-time intelligence, right? As the Israelis are getting this intelligence, why they move so quickly, right? They've always had a plan to do certain things, but when you get information, you got to act on it and verify it, and they got this information. They said, all right, we think this is happening here. I think from what I understand, there's 4 sites, but the enrichment place is in this mountain thing. And it might be 4 different mountain things. I don't have all the details. But what I do know is that they want to hit this thing. I don't know that they have the capability, from what I'm hearing from our military people. We're the only people that, A, have the bomb, and B, know how to use it. So other bombs would not be as satisfactory or at all. So, again, they're saying you need 10 of these to get through a mountain that size. At least this is the last analysis I heard. And very complicated, right? Why are we going to use 10 bombs that cost, I don't know, some, crazy millions of dollars each one? Why? So that we don't have to put any troops on the ground. And, the minute you put any troops on the ground, it becomes this, you now have an actual war going on that could last forever because you got to get them on the ground. You got to get them off the ground. With bombs, you go in, you drop, and you leave. And, of course, it's not that simple, right? But it is in many ways, right? In its most simplest terms. So I agree with you. Israel, do what you got to do. And should you not be able to, the president has to make a decision. I'm going to support the president's decision because I agree with the world, and I've seen Iran act the way they do over the years. These are not the people you want. People that hijack planes, people that fund small terror groups all over the place to blast rockets at ships in the Strait of Hormuz and everything else that they're doing in with the Houthi rebels. I get it. That this type of thing has to end. The bombing of the Marines in Lebanon and Beirut, this is not good, clearly, understood. So that's where I'm at with it. Should they need the help? I think we should be at the ready to get it done. And I truly believe the last thing Trump wants to do is do that. I think he'd much rather take a victory lap, break his arm, patting himself on the back, saying, I got him, Ali Khamenei. I got him, the Ayatollah, they call him. They call him the Ayatollah, and I got him to come right to our table. He came right to the table. He made us say, let's make a deal. I want to make a deal. Everything blew up in my face. No pun intended with the blowing up. And I think he really, that's the outcome he's looking for. I pray to God he gets it. Anyway, thanks for your call, my brother. Shout out to WMAL. Let's go to Doc. Doc, Wilmington, Delaware, WDEL. What's up, OG?
Oh, well, my OG Latino or patriot brother. Here's what I think is going to happen. I'm fine.
Go for it.
I'm worried about the Middle East, but here's what's going to happen. And what we have to be cautionary of them hitting against the United States. We're going to hit them from Diego Garcia. They're going to fly there, bomb the liver and the crap out of them, and settle this thing once and for all. Here's what I think should be done, though. I think that we should guard against Hezbollah inside this country. As of 20 years ago, the number 2 man in the CIA lectured here at our University of Delaware. He said that Hezbollah, as backed by Iran, is the number 8 team of international terrorism. And this is the quote, and I'll head on to something else real quick. His quote was, he says, "Sir, they have teams in this country ready to go. We know where most of them are. We don't know where all of them are." End quote. Now then, Hezbollah is dangerous. That's their arm in this country. I think what we should really do, Rich, is to gun up the Israelis to the teeth, lend them for lend-lease under President Roosevelt, Prime Minister Churchill, give them B-2 bombers and bunker buster bombs, train their pilots in the use of them, give them AWACS aircraft, electronic aircraft, and give them air-to-air refueling aircraft, jet aircraft, like the KC-135. Give it to the Israelis. Let them fight a war on their own terms anywhere in the Middle East. Your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, I think I'm there with you on that. I think that's likely the way it would go. Trump, again, he's not going to, his famous line is, what are we doing? What are we getting? Right? So I could see him telling Israel, look, you want these things? Great. This is what it's going to cost you. I can get you an aircraft carrier. You could put all 10 of these bombers here. You could do, whatever. You got to hide them, I understand, because they're so classified. You can't see them, you can't catch them, you can't blow them up, that type of thing. And it would be detrimental if they were ever caught. So I think that's part of why they may not give it to the Israelis, because it's so proprietary to the United States. But if there's another way around it, yeah, maybe he could say, look, I'll lend you our guys. You can hire our military for this job. I don't know. I'm thinking outside the box here. I don't know how that actually works. But I think you're right that something like that is likely what's going to happen. And someone else is going to pay for it down the line, I'm pretty sure. Doc, good to hear your voice, brother. Shout out to you and everybody in WDEL. Coming back to calls from Utah, Illinois, South Carolina, and more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, I want to hit the phones because we got more callers than time. Speed round. Let's go to Jerome, South Carolina, WTMA. Go for it, Jerome.
America is being run by a chicken hawk, and you got a bunch of chicken hawks backing him up. Go ahead and drop a bomb on Iran and see what happens. Go ahead. I dare you to do it, chicken hawk Valdez.
Well, you see what happens here, Jerome. Like most Democrats, you are now advocating for the bad guys, right? You want me to get on the mic and defend Iran? Not a chance, my brother. Anyway, thanks for the call. Let us continue. Let's go with Calvin. He's calling us from Utah, streaming the show tonight. RichValdez.com. Calvin, go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, why haven't we talked about the U.S. laying our hands on this nuclear material? It's really valuable. It could be used in nuclear reactors all over the world. It seems that it's the regime that is the problem. We've got the gun pointed at their head.
Right. Well, Calvin, I think for us to safely remove nuclear material would be crazy. I think we got to blow it up before it's fully enriched and make sure that they don't have the ability to do it. Punto y final. Period. The end. Ziggy in Chicago coming right back to you. Amigos, stick with me. More to come straight ahead. It's Rich Valdez. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. We're just getting started. Don't go anywhere.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Welcome to Thursday night's program. We're 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and looking forward to speaking with you guys. We've had a great night on the phones thus far. The phone number 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ, and let me tell you, what a conversation with Major General Bob Dees. He was the commander of the U.S.-Israeli Combined Task Force for Missile Defense. Very eye-opening. And, of course, our conversation last hour with Mike Howell, that was very eye-opening as well on the potential criminal charges that could be brought if they can prove that people knew and were knowingly abusing this auto pen. Now it's the plot has thickened. And, of course, I want to talk this hour about the news of the day, your thoughts, opinions, reactions, everything going on, as well as what's going on, right? We've got all these things happening in the world, and yet we still face some of the same problems we've been facing. A lot, much less, thankfully, right? We're 19 days into June, and I haven't heard of a whole lot of Pride Month fiasco. Thankfully, there's a lot less government funding of the LGBTQ movement, because I might support that if there were funding for the straight movement, right? But there's not. And how could the government get behind one movement and not another? That's picking favorites, and the government doesn't need to be involved in that. So I think it's conspicuously quiet this year. But men are men, girls are girls. When I was a kid, my dad loved watching a show called Archie Bunker. It actually was called All in the Family with Carol O'Connor, and the character was Archie Bunker. And, you know, he was a Brooklyn guy. We were Brooklyn people, so it was cool to watch the show. And the white guy, I'm explaining it as if you didn't see it, but I guess for anybody who's never seen it, he was a white guy that lived next door to some black family, and a black family that was entrepreneurial, the Jeffersons, and they owned some dry cleaners. And it was, the comedy was just brilliant. Again, I grew up in an area like that, and I grew up in an area that was, you know, on one side of the block was a black neighborhood, Flatbush, and on the other side of the block was a Jewish neighborhood. And, you know, we were like the Puerto Ricans of that area. It was a very interesting time to be alive. But you know what? It wasn't weird at all. Everybody kind of got along, and everybody had their own kind of neighborhood per se. But there were people interspersed everywhere. And that was normal, right? It was very normal. I've said this on the air many times, but it was very normal for me to grow up the way I did. For example, in kindergarten, there was a kid that was half Arab, half Dominican. I believe his name was Osama Marrero. And, you know, we had nap time during kindergarten. So there was, you know, we'd lay down. And I remember the kid on one side of me, he was Haitian, a really tall kid. And his name was Stanhope Ellis. Nice guy. And on the other side of me was Osama Marrero. Right above me or next to me, you know, like to the top of me when you're laying down or to my feet, I forget who was by my feet. I think it might have been a girl named Jessica Maldonado, who came from, I think she was on Church Avenue, but I could be mistaken. Again, my memory is not that great when I was in first grade or kindergarten. But I remember a lot of them. And Mark Schulman, my Jewish friend. And so just think about that, right? You know, an Arab Dominican, a Jewish kid who was white, a Haitian kid, Stanhope Ellis, who was tall, very tall, and the Puerto Rican girl, and this was normal, right? Everybody everywhere was from a different place, and we all got along. We were all from the same place. We fought, of course, like, you know, New Yorkers fight and kids fight and argue and whatnot, but that's the world. And so this show, All in the Family, which again many of you may know, some may you don't, was about life, and it made fun of things. And back then, you know, part of the theme of the song was Archie Bunker kind of, I think, throwing back a couple of whiskeys and singing a song. And one of the parts is he says, "Back when girls were girls and men were men." And it was funny then, and it's even funnier now, because he was talking about it from a different perspective. But when you say that today, when girls were girls and men were men, you know, now we're talking about when, you know, actually like before your transition, before you were, you know, lied to or deceived into thinking that whatever issue you were facing in life would be fixed by taking hormones to become the opposite sex. And this is something I'm so glad we've come away from. And we've had so many remarkable interviews with so many people on this program. I interviewed, I forget his name right now, but he was just a remarkable guy that lived 30 years as a woman and then detransitioned to become a man. I remember his last name, Gray. Very, very, very fascinating interview. I'll see if we can invite him back, because I'd love to get his take on a few things. But so many things happening in our culture that are slowly, in my opinion, being reversed. And you've got the Supreme Court finally weighing in on things, agreeing with Archie Bunker that, girls are girls and men are men in many ways, right? Just like yesterday's Tennessee case. The Supreme Court yesterday, and we talked about it with Hans von Spakovsky from the legal perspective, on the importance of allowing a state to defend the children in its state. Now, of course, the media took the position that the court upheld a ban. But I wouldn't say it's a ban. It's kind of like saying there's a ban on murder and the court is upholding a ban on murder. No, murder is illegal. Murder is wrong and murder is bad. So it's not like you're banning something. It's by nature, it's banned. It is a bad thing. And I think that's what we have here, right? This thing that they've euphemized as gender-affirming care is nothing more than brainwashing and making your boy cut off his penis or your girl cut off her breasts. And that's crazy if it's happening to anybody that's younger than 18. If they have not reached their age of majority, nobody should be allowing their kids to have this type of surgery. These things are crazy. So I want to talk about why we are in the mess we're in when it comes to this gender fiasco, when it comes to boys being boys and girls being girls. Why are so many people trying to be the opposite sex? And not even with transition all the time. In some cases, it's just women who refuse to be feminine in themselves. And, they're like, I don't need no man. I could make my own money. I could do my own thing. I could do X, Y, and Z. What is the basis of that? What is the genesis of that? So anyway, I want to get into that and a whole lot more. Of course, we're going to continue our conversation on this war between Iran and Israel, and any updates that occur with respect to that. I'm going to bring you that live if President Trump decides to jump in the fight. I don't know what will happen between now and the end of the program, but we're going to continue both the domestic conversation, the national conversation, and our conversation with you all, we the people, the callers of this program, from one coast of the country all the way to the other. 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Rich Valdez, who again will do a fine job, and I know you'll enjoy listening to him.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Feminism has really taken a wrong turn. So the earliest feminists, they were seeking to build a society that fits around the needs of women. So that's ending kind of maternity discrimination and allowing women to be wives and mothers and still have fulfilling work, with flexible hours or whatever they needed. Somewhere along the line, feminism turned into this kind of Carrie Bradshaw, Sex and the City type feminism, where it was all about living a hedonistic lifestyle, not having commitments, not being part of a committed relationship, but just being able to do whatever they wanted. And this brand of feminism is the one that's kind of followed us into the 21st century. But actually, it's made us a very lonely and isolated nation. If you look at our statistics, a lot of people who are living by themselves and not by choice, by circumstance. And they would like to have a family, but haven't been given the support to do so.
That's C.K. Miller on social media making that pronouncement, and sounds pretty accurate to me. You're going to live a lonely life. I think J.D. Vance said childless cat ladies, and he took a lot of heat for saying that, but I think there's a lot of truth in that. Anyway, I want to get to the bottom of this. I don't want to sound like a woman-bashing man. I want to sound like a man that is asking a lot of questions about the root and cause and point of all of this radical feminism. And I want to do that with somebody who understands this well. Dr. Gilda Carle is with us. She's spokesperson for the International Council for Men and Boys and the author of Real Men Don't Go Woke. Dr. Gilda Carle, welcome back.
Thank you so much, Rich. Good to talk to you again.
Likewise, thank you. And you heard that clip from C.K. Miller talking about this, and I thought it was an interesting take because we don't hear too many things about that in social media land, and it rang on me true because of, again, the landmark decision yesterday by the Supreme Court allowing states to defend children in terms of the attack on their genitalia, going by the name of gender-affirming care. And I thought to myself, if that's not a great stride, I don't know what is. Doc.
Well, I You know, it's interesting. 25 states have enacted laws that ban transgender treatments for minors. I have a particular problem with this because minors are people who are 18 years old. The problem is that the law doesn't match up with the science. We know that the prefrontal cortex of the brain that makes decisions does not mature until age 25, and now scientists are telling us, it's more like age 30. So if you allow 12-year-olds to make decisions about what they want to cut off on their body, chances are when they reach maturity, and I'm not talking 18, the legal age of maturity, I am talking the age of real maturity according to scientific information. And when they have found out that they made a mistake, they cannot go back again. And that is heartbreaking. I recently heard a woman talk about, she was going through a phase, she said, and now she blames her parents for allowing this. Well, you know, she was going through a phase. When do parents become parents? And this goes so far back to when parents decided they ought to be friends with, not friendly towards, their children. And so they didn't take on the strong parenting role. They allowed the child to dictate what the child wanted because maybe her or his friends were doing something similar. And you know, the need to fit in is omnipresent at that age of adolescence. And the parents gave into that. And the defense of the parents was that, well, I don't want my child to suffer. Well, what about after the child leaves age 12 or 13? What happens when the child is finally an adult and wants to go back? And this young woman was saying that she had a double mastectomy and she was unable to nurse children later on, and she so mourned that opportunity. When
Doctor,
parents become parents.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
I just
as you're saying that.
So I'm going further back to beyond what the age of majority is legally.
Yeah.
I'm going further back to when the child is being raised with values. Where are the values?
Yeah, well, I think this is a big deal. And you know, a couple of things you said I want to give a reaction to because I think they're so spot on. Earlier you mentioned, you know, the prefrontal cortex and all that. And I think the argument you'll hear from that is we let people go to war at an earlier age so they can decide what they want to do sexually and whatnot. And I get that. But, you know, I remember being a kid and my mom had me when she was 28. And after I was the fourth kid, and she decided she was going to, you know, have her tubes cut and tied and whatever. My dad had already had several kids that he brought to the table, and we were a big clan. So I remember asking her that and talking about that with her once, and she told me, and she said, I'm glad I didn't do it. She said, because I was going to do it after, you know, one of my siblings. And she said, but I waited, and I didn't do it because they told me you can't do it till you're 25. I think there was a criteria when she asked to do it. She said, I think you had to have 4 kids or be 25. And that was what the doctor told her. So she didn't do it.
Wow.
And isn't that something, right? And that was back in the late 70s.
This is just shocking to me. I've never heard a doctor be so intuitive about the prefrontal cortex. I'm impressed.
So
wow.
it makes me think, wow, we had so much sense back then. Right, because I wouldn't even be here.
Well, this doctor did. Yeah, I absolutely agree.
Yeah, and the other thing I was going to say about what you're saying is that it's just, I think, so spot on that the I guess the way the legal system, the media, the ecosystem that we all operate in is like catching up to the truth. And they tried to pull the wool over our eyes And that lasted. It worked, right? But it didn't last for long. And what are your thoughts on the comeback? The fact that we're seeing cases like this come out of the Supreme Court, the fact that we're hearing talk on social media about the effects of radical feminism and how you'll end up alone, or as J.D. Vance said, a childless cat lady.
Well, I have a lot to say about this. First of all, where are the fathers in any of this? And I wonder specifically about that because I just finished writing Real Men Don't Go Woke. Right. Have the fathers abandoned their fatherly role, and have they stood by as the women make the decisions as to what is going to be cut off on their children? So I have that question. The next question is, how do we allow these 3 liberal judges on the Supreme Court to decide as though they are psychologists, psychiatrists, or even physicians? When Sotomayor, Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor, said, to fight, we have to be there to represent those who can't artfully represent themselves. Now, just one moment. How do we even give a say to a young child who should not be, quote, artfully representing herself or himself? That is not her or his role.
It's the parent's role.
So it is the parent's role. Thank you. So this whole idea that the Supreme Court, that knows nothing about human development and development of the brain, is going to decide this craziness for us is just upsetting. I can't also, based upon your question, I also can't for a moment not relate to what is happening now, the new power demographic that's going on in young men. Suddenly they're not interested in being so woke. They're coming back in droves to conservatism.
Well, you know what? Hold that thought right there. Dr. Gilda Carle, spokesman for the International Council for Men and Boys and the author of Real Men Don't Go Woke. The music means we got to take a pause, but we're coming right back. And we're going to talk about the resurgence of young men coming back to conservatism and what that looks like for radical feminism as we move forward. Keep it locked right here. It's Rich Valdez coming right back with Dr. Gilda Carle.
Everything that you do for this country and the airwaves, and I'm such a big fan.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, I'm waiting to see if we can get a clip of audio. Mr. Good, any luck yet? UFC professional fighter Juliana Pena, and she was one of these people that got into a fight with a guy and gave a story about it. I'll share it with you in a moment, but there's also a quick report from MSNBC that I wanted to share with you because it's exactly what we're talking about right now, about why more men are becoming conservative. Listen to that.
I went into the back alley while I was serving and I fought the line cook, going at each other for a long time. A long story. He dropped me 3 times. I got dropped. I popped right back up. I went at him again. He dropped me again. I had my eye swollen shut for 3 days and 11 stitches in my eye. I thought that I could fight a man. I don't have any ego to be like, I could beat a man. Learned my lesson. I don't want anything to do with fighting dudes. I actually was in my head of being like, no, I'm a pro fighter. I can fight this guy and I'm gonna beat him. Juliana, he's 6'3", you're 5'6", like take that into account, you know, or like trying to like bob and weave your way in there to like get him down. All I gotta do is get in close and take him down and then I'll choke him.
She couldn't choke him, she couldn't bring him down. And again, just an interesting example, a humbling one, of a woman who's a professional fighter saying, I don't know what I was thinking, why I got into this with a man. Now, as we work on getting that other audio of why men are becoming more conservative, that is where we left off. And I wanted to share the clip of Juliana Pena, the UFC fighter, because I feel like there's been such a role reversal. I have 2 daughters, and being the dad of 2 daughters, I want my kids to feel like they can take on the world and you do everything that their heart desires. But I also realize there are realities in life. It doesn't mean that my kids can't become everything they want to be, but there's a good chance that they won't become certain things, because when was the last time you saw someone, I don't know, a woman climbing a telephone pole, right? It's not a common occurrence. So there's a lot of jobs that women just don't gravitate to, and more over the years, women will get more into if that's their inclination. I think the bigger part of this is that they're not so inclined to get into those types of roles. So I want to continue our conversation with Dr. Gilda Carle. And Dr. Gilda Carle, we left off with the discussion about men becoming more conservative. And I also want to get your reaction to this professional UFC fighter admitting, I shouldn't be taking on guys in the alley of the restaurant.
What was I thinking? She said after the fact.
Yeah.
You know, this whole thing fits into the women's sports issue right now. Why would men even want to enter a race where they know they're going to be more powerful, because men are usually more powerful than women are? I mean, this is just a physiological fact. Or better still, how would you like to be rescued from fire by a woman because she was sent in there because she was a woman, rather than well-trained as a firefighter?
Right. Yeah,
it doesn't
we saw
make
that.
That's right. It doesn't make any sense. And it's interesting that there are all these polls. Americans oppose this so-called gender agenda. Americans oppose that. And I love the term that you used earlier on the earlier segment, gender-affirming care. You call this care?
Right.
For young people? This is not care. I would like to get to the bottom of who is making money from this as you cut apart our children.
No, I think you're 100% right, and it's definitely a movement with money making in mind, if not experimentation. I think some mad scientist somewhere said, let's see how far we can get with this, and let's see if they'll take the bait. And people took the bait and ran with it. Now, Dr. Gilda Carle, I'd be remiss if we didn't pick up where we left off and put a point on your thoughts on why men are becoming more conservative, why Gen Z in particular is I don't, for lack of a better word, being more manly.
So easy. Rich, that is so easy. Because the women are putting the men down. They're crushing them. They're canceling them. They're castrating them and castigating them every time they turn around. They are all called, no matter who they are, toxic. And the men have had enough. They don't want to be called toxic. And they are looking at, excuse the term, it's been used a lot, common sense. They want to be men. And the women who have had a taste of having all this control seem to enjoy the control, except that they are trying to control the men. And men are smart enough to recognize, I am not going to be controlled. So they are pushing towards conservatism. The women are pushing, insisting that they are woke. And Rich, I can't tell you. You know, on my website, I offer consultations and relationship advice. And these women are coming to me, and they are the Gen Z and the millennials, and they're saying, I can't find a guy. Well, what guy is going to stick around if all you do is put him down and criticize him for being toxic when you don't even know the meaning of the word?
You know, Doc, there is a lot of women out there, or a growing number, I should say. I don't want to indict women here, but I've met several that have shared with me that in this day and age that we're in, because women were once not permitted to get a bank loan, therefore they had very few employment opportunities. There was a point in time where they couldn't go to school. It made all the sense in the world to marry an attractive man that had some success if you wanted survival in life. But given where we are today, we don't need that anymore. We could buy our own house. We can get our own six-figure job. We could do with our own education. And what do I need a man for but for procreation? And there's options for that. What do you say to women like that?
Well, this goes back to, and I talk about this in Real Men Don't Go Woke, I talk about how men want honey, women want money. And you're talking about women finding attractive men. I think women are more interested in finding men who are a meal ticket, who are richer than they are, even if they themselves are pretty wealthy, and they want to have a total say in what they and their men are doing. And life doesn't work that way. You know, it's you have a relationship with somebody, it's never 50-50. Sometimes he doesn't feel so well, so you'll put in 90 for his 10. Sometimes you won't feel so well. He'll put in 90 and you'll give 10. But that's the way life is. For you to come to the table and say, I want a woke man, when you don't really. Because woke means silent, spineless, and unable to speak your mind. And women tell me time and time again, I don't know. He doesn't talk to me. I don't know how he's feeling. He won't share his emotions. Well, of course not. He's learned. I mean, and this is a simple lesson that he has learned over time. He opens his mouth. He gets closed down. So he keeps quiet. And if he doesn't shrivel up as a woke man, then he says, I've had enough. And he goes to conservatism. It's very simple from my perspective and all the research I have done.
Dr. Gilda Carle, do you think that there's been a resurgence of the man's man, the John Wayne type, the guys that, take the bull by the horns in current society and in current days?
I think there is, and all you have to do is look at these Westerns. Yellowstone was very popular.
Yeah.
And all the spin-offs that one got. I mean, that is showing us that men want to return to maybe the John Wayne character.
I think women were fascinated with that program as well.
Women were, except that they often felt left in the dust as he rode off on his horse. And they said, well, what am I going to do? And they wanted him to come back to them. But this is all the hunter-gatherer that we knew from past times. And not that any women are saying, I want a Neanderthal guy. No, right. We're saying, I want a guy with a spine who tells me how he feels. Otherwise, I am in a relationship with just myself. And that ain't fun.
Dr. Gilda Carle is the media's go-to relationship strategist, and you might remember her from MTV's Love Doc and some other TV shows. And I'm happy to have spent this time having this conversation with you, Dr. Gilda. Let everybody know how they can find you, the best website, the best social media handle.
Oh, there's only one website, drgilda.com, drgilda.com, and I am on all social media, including X, where I see you, Rich, a lot.
Yeah, I try to stay active on all of them. I'll make sure to get to you on the others as well. Folks, check her out at Dr. Gilda and at drgilda.com. Dr. Gilda, you are a gentlewoman, a scholar, and a patriot. I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate your wisdom.
God bless you, Rich. Keep on fighting the fight.
Amen to that. You too, sister. And amigos, we come back with your calls, thoughts, reactions, and so much more. Open Phone America is coming up. We're talking about Iran. We're talking about the resurgence of the conservative man. Is there a conservative comeback for men in America? I want to hear your thoughts on that and so much more. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America, and you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
First time in modern American history, more young men than women identify as religious. But what's interesting is that this is happening at the same time that we're seeing a political shift to the right. In fact, the number of young men who identify as Republicans has outpaced the number of young men who identify as Democrats for the first time in a decade.
I was on the steps of the Florida State Capitol, advocating for climate activism, the Green New Deal, all that stuff.
And then now?
I'm a staunch conservative.
But what does that mean politically and socially? For some pastors, it looks like this.
What we're seeing in this erosion where now anyone can be a family. Two men can be a family and they can adopt kids, which I think is problematic. Two women could be a family, they can adopt kids. Marriage doesn't mean anything anymore.
What threat is that to you if those two men love each other?
Because you can point statistically to our society being eroded from within because two men automatically create an unstable household because that is not God's design for a family.
So there you have that. That's from MSNBC, by the way, and a very interesting topic. What's going on with men in America? Are we seeing a comeback? I want to get your thoughts on this. Let's go to Tommy, Naples, Florida, WTTB. Tommy, go right ahead.
Rich, how are you, brother? Thank you for taking my call. God bless you, and God bless America.
Amen.
I just want to thank you for the good work you do, and I just think that men just want to be men, and women are a little controlling, but I think that in the long run that men will always, that's the queen, will bow, and we'll just do what the women want, or we will just not say anything. So anyway, I thank you for taking my call, and keep up the good work, my brother.
Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. And that is the proverbial question, right? They always say, who's the head? Is it the woman that's the head? Is it the man that's the head? I heard one woman say the woman is the neck because the man can't turn his head without the woman. Although the Bible, I believe, says that a good woman's like a crown and that, is above the head, which I think is cool, right? It's like an adornment to the king. And that's really the type of partnership I think you need, right? You need a good woman that helps you make your decisions, that has your back, makes you look good, and is in your head, quite literally. So thanks for the call, my brother. WTTB, Florida in the building. Now, I want to get your thoughts on what's going on with Iran. Let's go to Ziggy, Chicago, Illinois, WLS. Ziggy, what do you think about Iran?
Thank you, Mr. Valdez, for doing what you're doing. I think about Iran, I think right now my family fought and died for the preservation of this country. I love Donald Trump. I love what he's doing. I love the changes he is making. I would show the rest of the world the power that we have here in the United States of America. And I would take and send them bombers and bomb Iran back into way before the Stone Age. Get it done and over with. Because who knows right now, who knows right now what they're doing and how much nuclear weapons they already have. Now, I know it's a big decision for our president. It's going to cause a lot of chaos. But you know what? The man is honestly trying to save lives and countries over there. He wants to bring everybody together. Peace, love, and understanding.
Yeah, listen, I got you, brother. And listen, you brought up something that I think is interesting and important. And earlier today, the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, she was saying that Iran has everything that it needs in order to do what they've got to do, and I think that's a very important distinction, right? Because the media has been reporting it as they're weeks away from having what they need to start building the bomb. Others are saying they're weeks away from having enough enriched uranium. So Caroline Leavitt today in cut number 5, she clarifies this from the White House press briefing room that Iran is ready to go. Listen to this.
When the president said a few weeks away, did he mean obtaining enough enriched uranium to start building a weapon, or did he mean Iran is a few weeks away from completing the production of a weapon?
I'm glad you asked that, Weija. It's an important question, and it's one, frankly, the media has been getting wrong. Let's be very clear. Iran has all that it needs to achieve a nuclear weapon. All they need is a decision from the supreme leader to do that. And it would take a couple of weeks to complete the production of that weapon, which would, of course, pose an existential threat not just to Israel, but to the United States and to the entire world. And that is something that the entire world, including countries like Russia, is in agreement with, that Iran should not and cannot obtain a nuclear weapon. And that's why the president believes that, and he's believed that, again, not just his political career, but frankly, his entire life.
So again, a lot of clarity being added there by the White House. Ziggy, thank you for your thought on that, and I appreciate it. And amigos, more from you guys, we the people, calls from Connecticut, New Mexico, and more coming in, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. To the phones we go. With the music playing, that means we've got to go. So I'm going to give you what John in Stamford, Connecticut is telling us. He's streaming the show from 94.9. And check this out. He says, Trump is doing an amazing job dealing with Iran. John, I agree with you. I think you're spot on there. Linda in Las Cruces, New Mexico, says on KNUW, she says we need to take out Iran's nukes and Ayatollah Khamenei with it. I think I might be with you on that one. I'm not there yet, but let's see what happens. And of course, amigos, this is the end of the road for me. Take care, good night, and God bless you, America. Hasta la próxima. I'm Rich Valdez.